Hi guys, welcome back to Spilling the Tea podcast with Kiki and Haylin. And this is episode 27. Fit check time.
Go, just hurry.
My hair, I bought it. My shirt, I don't know, probably like
What do you
from
mean
Target.
you don't know?
I don't
Let
know.
me see. If it says Wild Fable, you know it's from Target. Oh, yep, it's Wild Fable.
And then my pants, probably from my sister's closet.
OMG.
There's no tag. Shout out Claudia.
It's faded.
Oh, it's faded. And that's it, because I'm barefoot.
I got this from TJ Maxx. But what's the brand? OMG, we should do this before the episode.
The brand is DKNY.
And I have my slippers again.
Her favorite.
Okay, let's do it. Today we are talking about
Boundaries. My favorite topic, and sometimes can be a little bit controversial because before we get into why it can be controversial, what exactly are boundaries?
I think I love the way that Brene Brown talks about boundaries, because she says that it's the intersection of where I can love you or love that person and also like respect myself, and that intersection of that is where your boundaries lie. So to really clarify that, if someone is setting a boundary with you, it's because they want you in their life. It's because they want to make sure that you are still in their life. And so by presenting a boundary to you, that's a way that they can keep you in their life as long as you can respect that boundary. So I just want to start off with saying, like, it's not it feels like a bad thing sometimes, but it's really a way that relationships can thrive. So we want to encourage people to set boundaries.
Yeah, I like to explain kids, especially when I was a nanny. I always like to explain kids that boundaries, it's pretty much like a rule that you make for yourself, where you tell people like, this is the way I want to be respected. And if you don't respect me in X, Y, and Z, then maybe we can't be friends. Because for example, like kids will be like, well, Auntie, I went to the playground and like that kiddo doesn't want to give me his truck. I'm like, well, like maybe his boundary is that is his truck. He's gonna play with it. And then maybe if you ask nicely, like, hey, when you're done, do you mind sharing? Then maybe the kid is gonna want to share with you. But if they don't want to share, that's okay too, because that's their boundary. It's their toy. They brought it to play with themselves.
Another good boundary for kids is teaching them what safe touch is and unsafe touch, right?
So a physical boundary.
Right, and consent. So a lot of times in our culture, it was like, go kiss that uncle and go sit on that. And now we try to teach our kids that you don't have to kiss someone if you don't want to, right? Like giving them the body, like autonomy and consent to say that, hey, this is my body and I don't want you to touch me or any of those things. We are trying to implement that now into our younger kids.
I think that something that we have very similar, even though we can be very different, it's that the way we're raised culturally. I feel like our cultures are one to be like, oh, go kiss your grandma, oh, give your brother a hug or whatever. And like, I grew up like that, where especially my grandparents, my mom not too much, but my grandparents, they would always tell me like, oh, go give them a kiss or go give them a hug. And I'm like, I don't want to. So now I always encourage the kids that, hey, if you don't want to hug that person, just straight up do not hug them, because it's a physical boundary of yours. It's a rule that keeps you safe.
And you can be polite and you can still greet people, but you don't have to necessarily kiss them. And I think I do have to shed light on like being in this industry for 20 years, like understanding CWS and CPS, and there are a lot of sex offenders within your family and friends, even like school, even community, even church. And so unfortunately, right, I think we have to be able to teach our kids these boundaries in order to keep them safe in these different aspects of their life.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes parents try to teach their kids like, oh, you know, like the parts that nobody can see, like those are parts that nobody can touch. But it's like, my armpit, you can't see my armpit. Like, does that mean that nobody can touch it? Like, explain kids really what that means, you know, like, and even like sometimes we say like, oh, Haylin, only like mommy, daddy, and grandpa can like wash you down there, you know, and like that may not be accurate because like what if grandpa does something? Like you got to teach the kid what is appropriate and what is not very, very early on so that they can communicate with you if something bad happens.
And the way that we are able to do this is we talk to kids even as young as 3, 4, 5 about secret touch. If anyone tells you don't tell anybody, we already know that that is not allowed, that you have to tell mommy and daddy about that, because there are some people out there that they could hurt you. So it's important that you let us know right away.
Yeah, so that's pretty much physical boundary in a nutshell. Let's talk about emotional boundaries. How does that look like for you?
I think in terms of our mental health, right, it's important for you to protect your peace. So if I really want to help Kiki out because she needs help, but at the same time I might have just seen 13 patients, right? And maybe I'm not able to, like, say if you want me to help you clean your room or clean the patio or something, right? Even though I might want to say yes, but I mentally am drained and mentally cannot do that, then I would have to tell Kiki, like, hey Kiki, I'm so tired, but can I help you like another day, or I'm not going to be able to do it, rather than doing it and then feeling more emotionally drained, potentially resentful, right? And then also like I could be now like anxious or frustrated or overwhelmed. And so just knowing where your energy is and where your energy management is, especially with your mental health, is super important. But there's many examples for mental health, and when I'm thinking about the kids at the cafe, many boundaries come up for their mental health. So maybe we should talk a little bit about that too, like what you see in the cafe.
Another great boundary that I've noticed that some of the kids at Spill the Tea Cafe have implemented is that when they go to school, right, and it's PE and they have to do swimming, let's say there's this female assigned at birth, and their professors are telling them like, no, like, why are you showing up in shorts and a shirt? Like, that's not what you should be wearing for swimming. And the kid is like, no, like, I'm a boy, I'm gonna show up like this. Like, that is a boundary, and they're standing up for themselves regardless of what other people around them think.
Right. And for some other states or other places, and even for some kids in Hawaii, that might not be safe. So we do want to make sure that safety comes first. And if you're gonna get beaten or you're gonna get kicked out of your house, of course we're not saying to like set that boundary, but if you are in a school where it's acceptable, they have gender neutral bathrooms, it's important that you speak up and that you allow people to identify you as the way that you identify. And so we do encourage kids to do that, and we're very proud of them for setting those boundaries, because it takes a lot of courage to say, this is who I am, even though I might not look a certain way, I'm telling you who I am. That takes a lot of courage. And so when they're able to set that kind of boundary, I think it helps them start to really accept themselves.
Is there another type of boundary that you want to talk before we share maybe what are some of our boundaries?
Yeah, I mean, I think just protecting your peace, protecting your mental health.
That's a hard one.
Right? Protecting your inner child or whatever, I guess, insecurities that you have, to be aware of those is really important, and then to set boundaries around it. So for instance, if I am a recovering people pleaser and I do still, I mean, I love people, and I think that's part of like my strengths, but at the same time it can tip into a weakness, right? If I'm always putting other people's needs above mine. And so what I've had to work on is saying, when I show up in this energy, I feel like I am responsible for the energy that I bring to my team, to Spill the Tea Cafe, even as a mom. But I really am like an introvert, or no one believes me, but what I mean is like I need a lot of alone time to recharge.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, and I've always been like that, even like from a kid, even from
childhood.
Hanabara days. That's what we say in Hawaii.
Wait, what is that?
Hanabara days is like boogers like in your nose.
Aww.
Like that's what they say in Hawaii. So if you're from Hawaii, you know what I'm talking about. But to acknowledge that and not feel guilty, right? Or work on not feeling guilty for, hey, I need this alone time so that I can show up in my best energy, right? Like if and Kiki's so close to me, so you know, like when my energy is off, but that means that I need alone time and I need to recharge and I need to read a book or I need to like listen to a podcast or I need to just be able to be vulnerable with myself. And a lot of times I feel like, oh, I don't have time to do that and I want to prioritize all these other things. But at the same time, I know that that is my fuel. And so I do not negotiate like my time that I need to myself. And that has taken me a long time to learn. In fact, I'm still working on it, but I think even the kids in the cafe, they really encourage me because they all like demand for their alone time.
Yeah.
And I really respect that. And so, or even my own like teenager is able to say, hey, like I need alone time, or like we can talk about that later. If you start to feel like you are arguing, right, with your child or with your boyfriend or with your spouse, when you start to see that, oh, I'm losing control of the situation, a good boundary is to say, hey, can we talk about this later? Because I'm getting like super upset right now.
I agree. I think that I'm like that kind of person when I'm having a very, I guess, fiery conversation. I need to step back, and there are people in my life that they're like, no, we need to figure this out
Right now,
and like,
I know.
it is very hard, and I don't want to make them feel dismissed, but it is a boundary of mine that I need to take a step back for the sake of the relationship and the friendship. Or else, like if I don't take a step back and I don't respect that boundary of mine, like it's gonna end very ugly. Another boundary of mine is respecting my time. When I was younger, like when I was a teenager, I would always say yes, yes, yes to any kind of engagement with my friends, like going out to the movies or going out to the mall, because I had this like fear of being left out. And even when I was tired or even when I had no energy, I would still show up, and then I would just come home super drained.
Like
but
at
now,
the club?
yeah, I'm like, I don't want to go out. Like, I just want to stay home, going through TikTok, you know, and like my friends don't let me. But now I've realized that no way, like that is a boundary of mine. And when I respect myself, when I honor myself, I am in a better place to show up how I truly am. A boundary that I'm still working on is the digital boundary. Oh my God, I've tried so hard to, you know, like reduce the time that I spend online scrolling on my phone. And even when I said, like, I don't know if you use it, but you know how Apple has this feature where you can lock your apps after a certain time. Even when I put that, I just press the code and like dismiss the screen time. But I'm really, really, really working on trying to set a boundary where I don't spend as much time on the internet, because honestly, my brain gets fried.
Oh, okay. So you're paying attention to how you feel afterwards, right? Because sometimes like scrolling on TikTok or whatever is like a form of like, it could give you energy too, right?
Yeah.
Like, or if it's like a way that you're like taking a break or something, it can be. But I'm really happy that you're recognizing, oh no, I don't feel good, right? So if you don't feel good, then of course, what I would want you to do, or anyone to do, is actually take an action step of like, okay, what, because that's great that you did the app.
The screen lock,
The
even though I
screen
still
lock.
put the code and like unblock it. It's like, come on, Kiki, don't cancel it.
No, but I'm saying
bad.
to take an action would be about like really thinking, can you replace that action with something else, right? Like you would have to make a decision to replace that action with something else. Because if we say we're just gonna stop, or we're just gonna set a boundary and we keep it very general like that, then we're not really gonna see any changes.
Yeah, any
right? Because it's
improvement.
very incremental as well.
Little by little. It's very important, you know, like once you've come to the realization that you're gonna set a boundary, it is extremely important to maintain it. Does not
The
matter.
maintaining is the hardest part.
Doesn't matter how hard it gets. It is very important for you to maintain that boundary. Who cares about how other people feel? I mean, yes, we wanna care about everyone that is around us, but really you need to focus on yourself, and you need to always remember in your brain, like, what happens every time you violate that boundary? Like, what happens within you? Like, for example, when I break my digital boundary, I feel really shitty, you know? And like maintaining that boundary, it's probably the hardest.
Why do you think that you feel terrible?
Because I feel like I can't follow through, you know, like a goal that I have established for myself. Like the temptation of continue on TikTok feels like it's more important in my brain that respecting that boundary of mine. Even though like TikTok is still gonna stay there, the videos are still gonna stay there, but the time that I waste on TikTok is never gonna come back. Like it's never gonna return. And that part of like me wasting my time on TikTok makes me feel really guilty.
I think, yeah, this is a really good insight, Kiki. I think when you are making a promise to yourself, and then when you break that promise, a lot of us do this. In fact, all of us do this, right? Like, for instance, I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna join Body Balance again tomorrow. Oh, I'm gonna go work out tomorrow, right? But then do I ever do it, right? So my point is that if you break promises to yourself, like my example of the working out, like Kiki's example of the TikTok, the message you're sending to your subconscious is that I cannot trust myself. And the more that you can't trust yourself, you understand how our self-esteem and our self-confidence can go down. So it's really easy. Okay, not easy. It's simple, but not easy. What you have to do is start building the promises that you make to yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-confidence will go up.
And you're also like teaching other people, you know, when you break your boundary, you are teaching and telling other people like, this is how you can treat me. If I don't respect my own boundaries, then you don't have to either.
Right. It's like the whole concept of behavioral modification, right? And I don't want to lecture everyone, but essentially, if you are trying to extinct a behavior, and I'll use like a baby crying, for example, and if the baby is crying and getting louder and louder and louder, and you're trying to sleep train them, which I don't believe in, by the way, but to each his own, and for every family is different. And if you are trying to sleep train your baby, you cannot pick them up, like no matter how loud they get, because as you pick them up and as they get louder and louder and louder, then they just have learned the next time that they have to start off at that degree of crying, and they will never be able to like learn how to self-soothe if you continue to pick them up. And it is kind of sad, but like when you don't pick them up, then they learn how to self-soothe, even if they're stressed out or even if they, you know, they have high cortisol. But your baby does learn how to sleep and self-soothe, and it's only with consistency, right? Like if you pick up your baby every other night, they're never gonna learn how to, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we're setting boundaries, the consistency is so important, and it's okay to take a step back and break down those goals, like kind of like what we talked about just now.
Yeah.
So as we continue to try to make promises to ourselves, what kind of boundaries do you feel is most important for you, Kiki, or maybe even for like our workplace? Maybe let's switch the focus to like work boundaries.
Okay, so work boundaries, and it took me really, literally 2.5 years. I know you kept saying it over and over and over, but for me it was really hard to practice it. And it's that when you're off, you're off. You know what I mean? Like when you're gonna take vacation, don't look at your emails, don't look at your phone. Like people are gonna figure it out without you. And that for me was really hard to learn, because by me not practicing that boundary of taking time off, I enabled this only one point of failure to always be me, because I wouldn't allow myself to take off and I wouldn't allow other people to do their work in my replacement. So in the work environment, it was really, really, really challenging for me to just be completely off. And I just recently started doing that this year. So for me, work-wise, that's one of the
you're doing
boundaries.
amazing on that. I think as you're building a team, or for anyone who's starting up a nonprofit, or for anyone who's starting a business, it's so important to build your team. And as you build your team, you have to be able to delegate. You have to be able to let go. And with every new level that we hit at Spill the Tea Cafe, like we know that it's going to take a new version of ourselves, right? And what got us here to year 2 is not going to get us to year 3, and what got us to year 3 is not going to get us to year 4. So we have to continuously up-level ourselves, and that's different from like, I don't know, a state job, no offense, or like, you know, a very stable job where maybe, basically, okay, what I'm trying to say is, I think social entrepreneurship or business ownership in general, like we are required to set more boundaries than say like a more cushion, like chill job, you know?
What about you? What's a boundary that you have, you know, managed to work with work-wise?
I mean, same. I always really try to take a day off, and I do. I really want to take 2 days off, and so we're working on that.
We're working on it, but we block her Fridays, and Fridays are off, and then we review it in 48 hours, and she has 10 things. We're like, how did that happen?
And it's only because we're building our team. So
she said, let me justify it. Sorry, Tisha.
But I think that with work, okay, well, I'm proud of myself. I took like 2 vacations this year, like without working. So that was good.
I've also identified another boundary of yours.
Okay, go ahead, Kiki.
I thought she was gonna say it, but a boundary of Haylin that she had that she has I've noticed, as someone that works so closely with her, a boundary that I've noticed she has started to develop or really follow through is that a lot of people want to get in her calendars, and she's like, if they're not meeting these 3 things, like, we can't have a meeting. And I'm really proud of you because like 2 years ago, you would be like, yeah, I would meet with anyone, even like the guy from the gas station. You know what I mean?
Not the guy from the gas station.
It's to put into perspective that like just anyone, and now she's being really, really conscious and very wise in how she spends her time, and really like who and what is going to take us to year 3. So I'm just really proud of you because I know that was a really hard boundary for you to establish and to maintain.
Right, and in year 1, I had 1 full-time employee, and in year 2, we have 4, right?
Oh my God,
and so what I'm saying is, as our expenses go up, then I also tend to work more so that I can cover any kind of payroll that needs to happen, right? So in my head, it's always a balance of what are we willing to prioritize in terms of boundaries, right? And so I'm really proud of us as a team as we're growing. And I know that all of us as therapists, as people in the mental health industry, like we have to set boundaries in terms of not bringing our work home.
Yeah.
Because the work that we do can be heartbreaking. It can also be inspiring, and it's 100% rewarding because we see all of these kids getting better. However, we do see kids of this community being the highest risk for houselessness and substance use and sex work and dropping out of high school and suicide. And so that is the reality of what we're dealing with. And I'm so proud of our community because we know how to help these kids, and we have lots and lots of evidence of that. And so this is what keeps us going every day. Like, I can't say the names, but like, I'm driving here and I saw like this kid and that kid, and like they're just yelling out the window and being like, oh
they're like
God.
Literally our biggest fans.
And just telling us we're so grateful for this place, and oh my God, I can't believe I haven't gone to the hospital for 2 whole years, and this is like, I haven't, self-harmed, and this is the longest ever. It's just, we know what we're doing is making the impact that we need it to make. And we just have to continue to set boundaries so that we can continue to bring in the funding that's required to continue to service these kids.
Wow, she delivered. Frame that, Prim, frame that.
I am so proud of us. I really am.
I really am too. I want to give a special shout out and big mahalos to Light Vision Media for always sponsoring these videos. Prim, you work really hard to make sure that the best clips are in our feed. Shout out Deja, shout out Tisha, shout out everyone at Spill the Tea Cafe that is really helping us take this event to the next, this clinic to the next level. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what's ahead. And we're only gonna get there if we continue to maintain our boundaries.
Prim is so good. I love Prim. Prim is like a producer now, but she wants us to tell our listeners.
Okay, Prim said, frame this, guy. She said, remember, setting boundaries isn't about people, isn't about keeping people out. It's about protecting your peace and creating a space where both you and your relationships can thrive. Again, remember, like, people may think that by you setting boundaries, you're trying to push them away. What you're really trying to do is teach people how to respect you and how to love you so that both parties in the relationship and the friendship can thrive. Because if I don't understand Haylin's boundaries, right, when she needs time alone, I'm going to be like, well, why do you want to be alone? Why don't you want to hang out with me? I feel very left out. I feel very abandoned. But because I understand her, I'll be like, it's okay. Just connect yourself like a Tesla. And when you are done recharging, just come back and I'll be here. Because now I understand her boundaries and it allows our relationship to thrive. So I know it's not personal. I just know that's just the way she functions. And I know that's the way she thrives.
Yes. And okay, but I want to say one more thing about
Period.
that.
Also, if you're watching this video, I want you to comment down below what is one boundary of yours that you're not willing to sacrifice. I just want to hear it. I'm very curious to see what's your boundary because I know that we all, we're very different individuals and her boundary might not be my boundary, but I'm always really curious to see how everyone in lives keeps their peace.
Prim from the cafe, our social worker and associate therapist, wants us to identify one boundary. You guys identify one boundary that you must set this week, and you will take the first step in establishing this boundary.
Period.
So maybe comment that. What boundary do you need to set?
Okay, what boundary do you want to set this week?
What do you think I should set? Since you manage my calendar.
I think that the boundary that you should set for this week and the remaining weeks of the year,
anyway,
it's sticking to 37 hours a week per day. I mean, it's 37 hours per week of work because you still be doing a lot. So I want your boundary to be not work more than 37 hours a week.
You handle my calendar, so only you can.
Tisha handles her calendar.
But I mean,
but the thing is that, like,
do you know what
if you guys go back to a couple minutes ago, we will block her Friday so that she's off, and then she books something. And what am I gonna do? She's the boss and CEO.
I had to train Deja today.
Shout out Deja, our newest W2 employee. Okay,
but you
then
can
a different boundary. I have a different boundary for you.
Okay.
I want you to honor yourself and pour into your cup by showing up to Body Balance 3 days. 3 days out of 7.
Okay.
3 days.
Okay,
Can you do that?
I'm gonna do it. Kashmira, I'm gonna see you,
She
girl.
She shook it.
I'm gonna see you, girl.
Period.
Okay.
Period. Okay, what's a boundary that you think I should set?
I would love for you to set a boundary where you're not available to all of the staff and that you delegate that to someone else this week. So if you have like questions or all these things, you don't have to immediately think it's a fire. Like you can redirect them to a Loom video.
Okay.
That would be amazing.
I'm gonna try that, and I know that once I practice it, it's gonna be a boundary that I'm gonna be able to maintain. It's just that first step of doing it. It's very, very difficult. But once I do it, I know I'm gonna be able to maintain it. So that's a good boundary. It's gonna help me like throughout my career.
It's also gonna help you not take on like everybody else's job. You know what I mean?
Sorry, guys.
No. But I think it's really good, and I think that we all have to practice delegating out. Even me, look at me. I'm like a whole ass fundraiser now. Like I'm not a therapist anymore. I'm a fundraiser.
Grant writer, therapist, a mom, a wife, a friend. Like the list goes on. You know, like the list from like Christmas that rolls like that.
The naughty list?
No! Oh my God! You know, like when Santa Claus is like in the movies.
List.
And he's like reading the list of like kids or like presents, and it just like rolls like that.
Yes.
Anyway, all that to say that
let's set our $1 million boundaries. I got that from Rachel Rogers. Shout out to Rachel.
Shout out Rachel Rogers. You really challenged and transformed my girl, and we're so stoked because she really came with a whole ass different mentality from the retreat.
Awesome.
Okay,
all right, guys.
Yeah, if you guys want to learn more about boundaries, just swing by Spill the Tea Cafe. We can talk story more about it. You know what? We should do a workshop on boundaries for the teens in person.
Okay, let's do
We'll
it.
talk more about it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about Spill the Tea Cafe or our services, don't forget we're here to provide individual, group, and family therapy services. We also offer care coordination, which means that we help you and coordinate your care outside of Spill the Tea Cafe. So if you need something more than mental health services, don't worry, our care coordinators got you. If you are a funder or a donor that would like to talk story with us and learn more about the work that we do and want to help us amplify our impact, please reach out at info@spilltheteacafe.org. And if you're someone in the community that knows someone that should hear this story, please send them our way or introduce us via email, info@spilltheteacafe.org. Is there anything else you would like to say?
No, thank you guys.
Bye! Don't forget to come to Honolulu Pride. We're just a few weeks away.